Thank you for staying with us. For many years, Nigeria has been relying solely on crude oil exportation as its major source of revenue generation. However, the diaspora has become a crucial force for sustainable development and revenue through other means, one of which is the service export, a lucrative way of contributing to the nation's economy by delivering services to those who need them abroad. Service export is about the sale and delivery of intangible products from the remotest enclave in Nigeria to just about any metropolis in the world. Service export has also over time proven to be flexible and profitable, which make it a fast-growing market. Is Nigeria ready to key into this promising source of income? Well, joining us via Zoom for this conversation from Belgium is the Chairman Emeritus Nigerians in Diaspora Organization Europe, Collins Wiki. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning, Olamide, and thank you for having me. Theophilus, good morning to you.
Good morning.
All right, a future of an economy where we do not, solely rely on commodities, solid materials, or agricultural products. Do you see that, coming anytime soon?
It is already beginning to come in, a very escalated manner in Nigeria. I mean, for a very long time, Nigeria has, actually underwritten the notion of diversifying its economy beyond oil. But for a very long time as well, it has remained just words of mouth and, policy papers being churned out without necessarily taking all the right measures to see it happen. However, the good news is that over the last, last several years, I must say, government has actually, done much more incrementally to encourage non-oil exports. We could also see that, quite apart from the dwindling oil revenue, we could also see that, from the latest figures from Nigeria's, Office of Bureau of Statistics, where increase in, non-oil export has been sought that, for the first time, they have they have overtaken oil revenue. We could also see another sign in that from the, diaspora remittances, although that's a complete, different kettle of fish from oil export, service export. But the indication here is that when managed appropriately, diaspora remittances combined with service export could actually mean an astronomical rise in Nigeria's, revenue stream. It's just that enough attention hasn't been paid to it. However, the good news again is that in the current, 4G renewed foreign policy doctrine of Nigeria, the diaspora is actually one of those 4 Ds. Of course, details are scarce at this moment, but I believe that, the diaspora themselves, they just gathered in Abuja on the 24th, 25th, 26th for the annual diaspora conference, where service export was one of those items, that people showed much more interest in. So yes, the signs are there, but I hope much can now be done to, transit it from just indications to actual revenue and increased business for Nigeria.
So in all of this, there seems to be some daunting challenge. Now, when you say diaspora export, let's break it down for the layman. It means that you're providing service within Nigeria abroad, right?
Well, that is one part of it. Okay. But I think the most central part of service export that the diaspora can drive is the fact that a young man in Owerri, for instance, who is an IT freak, a graphics designer, does not have to leave Owerri, Southeast Nigeria, to provide some services to somebody in Brussels or in New York or even in Tokyo. Because these are intangible services that are borderless and can be, actually initiated from anywhere. So it is happening, but in very, very small measures. Now, the point that is being made here is that it's going to now be driven in a structured manner, and that the diaspora, on the basis of the diaspora being positioned in most of these major metropolises of the world, they have a role to play in actually helping to drive these, service efforts. I've just given an example with, graphics designer, for instance, but there are other, services that can indeed be, that can yield that multiplier effect. Nigerian films are being watched everywhere in the world thanks to Netflix. Just to add another important example to it. And the list is very, very long.
Yes.
But it's got to be driven very purposefully. The structure has now been given with a renewed foreign policy doctrine that includes diaspora as, the fourth D. But a lot more still needs to be done. I continue to emphasize.
All right, so it's instructive that you mention the structure. A lot of Nigerians are basically providing these kinds of services in diverse fields in Nigeria to different countries or outside Nigeria. So, as you have mentioned structure, the challenges seem to be daunting. What structures can be put in place to effectively aid diaspora service exports?
The realizing it, Theophilus, is not daunting. As a matter of fact, the risk of sounding simplistic, I want to, submit that it is as easy as ABC.
Okay.
Number one, the service provider in Nigeria does not need all the big investments, to be able to do that. As a matter of fact, people now work right from their phone using their WhatsApp, application to actually, provide some of these services, as opposed to the past where you need all the big iMac, and so on and so forth to be able to get your designs done. Now, when I talk of structure, I mean that the table has got to be organized. In the past, we used to have, for instance, desk officers in Nigerian embassies abroad, where these desk officers are specifically tasked with, services to the diaspora. Now, one of those things that could be done is, reinvigorating those, diaspora desk officers in Nigerian, embassies as part of the fourth D, which is diaspora, that is officially part of Nigeria's, foreign policy. That's number one. Number two, the diaspora can then work with these fine foreign policy, foreign service officers. And one good thing about Nigeria is that we have out here in the diaspora very brilliant, young, dynamic foreign service officers who stand ready to actually facilitate the inflow of economic activities in Nigeria. But I must tell you, they are very much underutilized. Now, this is one of those opportunities where they can now organize them better to identify people, receivers, customers for those services that Nigeria can export to the diaspora. And then, through that means, perhaps create, some sort of, I'm not talking of a commission or agency at this early stage, but it is not far-fetched. Countries like India actually has agency particularly responsible for service export. But Nigeria can start with organizing this through the diaspora with the diplomatic missions playing a cardinal role in making it happen. But it should remain, a private sector driven initiative.
Mm. And from what you have said, I could pick that this may also be some of the leading causes of brain drain. Rather than having to, export the service, you might as well just bring the individual to the country. But talk to us about some of the potential benefits that we could get from this. And perhaps this could form a larger part of our GDP.
Yes, absolutely, Olamide. The point is, making reference to the brain drain that you talked about. Now, tell me why the young man, Were, for instance, that is providing graphics design services to clients globally. Tell me what incentive will be there for that young man to want to leave Owerri, because right there, perhaps, in his mother's back room, he is earning his foreign, his foreign currency is, through the services that he delivers, because he is paid in either foreign currency or directly in Naira. Speaking to how this will add to the economy, of course, foreign currency earning will rise as a consequence of that. Number two, young people gets then the opportunity to utilize their talents, as startups, self-employed, young people, and thirdly, Nigeria, as a consequence of that, we gain more, acceptability as a country that is ready for business, because they see actually what is being provided. And let me say this, it is not new. There are companies, indigenous companies in Nigeria, that actually train young IT experts and then subcontract them to companies, IT companies, artificial intelligence companies across the globe. But these are all, individual initiatives. I'm saying that, when government, comes in, bring in their incentives and, negotiate good working, conditions for them, I believe that it will gain a lot more traction. And, of course, like you mentioned, it will add to GDP growth for Nigeria.
Mm. Okay, so we've seen situations where you've mentioned tech, and that's what many young people are doing. But there have been issues concerning agriculture where some people try to export, try to export food out of Nigeria to other parts of the world. And because of the bureaucratic nature of our system, it sort of discourages them. So now, that's just for food exports. Now, what this service exports, now diaspora service exports, how, what more can be done to encourage young people to take their services beyond the shores of Nigeria, beyond where they are at this point?
First and foremost, you've got to identify those exportable services. And number two, you've got to identify where those exportable services reside. In this case, I'm talking of the young people that have them. I mean, one of the obvious places to get started from is actually the universities and colleges that offers, IT courses and so on and so forth, where you identify the talents there, but also outside the talent, you also outside the talent in an organized setting like universities, the academia, and so on and so forth. There are also those who do it out of passion because they have the talent, but they are not necessarily, university graduates. Now, this is not something that requires specific formal, certification to be able to do. What you do speaks for yourself. And, once people see what you do is professional, it's nice, I mean, nobody's going to be asking whether you are a university graduate or not. So that's number one. Identify the exportable services, identify those that possess them, and then out here on the diaspora side and in the global economic side, that's where you have the diaspora because they are closer to the people where those services are going to be landed. So they also have that unique opportunities of actually making an inventory of those that need those services, including themselves, because some diaspora need those graphic services. Just keeping it at one example. So the role of, the desk officers at the embassy will be to actually match the demand with the supply coming from Nigeria. Honestly, this is, as simple as ABC, but you see, an idea that you do not know about is bigger than you. And once you know about it and begin to put pen and paper to actually draw up the architecture, it becomes, easy to implement.
And, when you look at Nigeria's economic development trajectory and in terms of, global competitiveness, where do we stand as with other climes? And what are the factors you are actually using to measure this?
Where we stand in some sectors is pretty abysmal. In other sectors, we are doing well enough. Well enough in terms of hovering somewhere around average. Take, for instance, non-oil export. The potential for Nigeria is huge. Either yourself or Theophilus mentioned agriculture, that remains a very, very, I would say, unexplored, area. But over the last several years, Nigeria has incrementally been scoring well, but they are not yet at par with, other African countries, for instance, Kenya, with, their exports of perishable goods, but also flowers, for instance, okay? But Nigeria has seen, an increase in its export, non-oil export figures, but far below its potential. Now, one can only expect and hope that, the things that have been done right in the last, let's say, 10 years and increasing on a yearly basis, that Nigeria should continue to do that while exploring other areas like I mentioned, service export, exporting services to other countries. This way, the economic trajectory will be one that you can consider to be rosy.
All right, so do we need some form of regulations to be able to achieve service exports?
Absolutely. Service export does not happen in a vacuum. Service export has got to be, driven within an organized environment, just like any other sector. There has to be, quality assurances. There also have to be training made available, from the supply side, which is Nigeria. You also have to look at the regulatory framework of the destination countries. What laws are in place to ensure that those services, are done? Because, this is not something you do in black. It's got to be formal. Then there has to be, some level of taxation. There is nothing wrong in Nigeria, to encourage a smooth takeoff, that they institute some sort of, tax-free regime, or at least, rebates to allow people, that breathing space to take off and to grow. So these are all things that require regulations, and indeed, it is only government through its agencies that provide these, regulatory frameworks.
In providing these regulatory frameworks, do you think that some of these laws or some of these regulations might want to stifle creativity in the service delivery?
When done properly, certainly not. As a matter of fact, if it does anything, it will be to encourage, creativity. Because once people see that a certain product, in this case service, is actually lucrative, well, it will encourage those who have been sitting on the sideline to actually, come in and, get active. So, if anything, providing, regulatory framework will actually help to invigorate, the creativity in people. But like I said, government has, of course, got to be careful not to, stifle through strict regulations the creativity in people that they get discouraged. It's done everywhere, in the world. And I'm not saying, living an open free, field where, it's all tax-free and all of that. No, government has to earn a bit of revenue from this as long as, they don't become shallots. They got to be reasonable about the taxation.
All right.
But in a manner that, retains people's interest and make it grow organically.
All right. So finally, for the average Nigerian watching this and wants to, venture into the service industry, but, is saying that there is no enabling environment. There are no, factors that will help, push this. Perhaps you could educate us on, private ways to explore this service industry.
Well, in the absence of a formal structure that I referred to at the beginning,
absolutely,
Nigeria does have Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, NIDCOM. At the moment, that is the agency that is actually instituted by government to, deal with all matters diaspora. Those that are interested could get started from there. Okay. And, NIDCOM does, from Nigeria, NIDCOM does have, database of Nigerians, Nigerian businesses, individuals, and of course, NIDO, Nigerians in Diaspora Organization. Through them, through that channel, NIDCOM, NIDO,
all right,
of course, the supply side, which is Nigeria, would then be able to be matched with the demand side. But I think the most, pertinent thing at this point is for Nigeria to begin to think of establishing that formal structure that will allow it to run independently, grow organically. But at the moment, while we are waiting for that to happen, because some of these things, need maturation time, but while we are waiting for that, people are already doing it, and they can do more.
All right,
by linking up either with NIDCOM or directly with NIDO.
All right.
And that's a fine place to leave the conversation. The big question is if Nigeria is actually ready to, key into this promising source of income. Well, we want to thank you, Chairman Emeritus Nigerians in Diaspora Organization in Europe, Collins Mweke. Thank you for joining us.